My name is Luis Hess. I am an immigration attorney here in the Houston and Woodlands area, and I'm here to talk to you about a common question I normally get from clients who have an upcoming interview with Immigration Services here at Greenspoint. What typically ends up happening is the client will get a letter in the mail stating that they have an interview at a specific date, at a specific time, typically at the 810 Gears Road location that's found at the intersection of I-45 and Beltway 8. So prior to going to the interview, there are a certain number of things that any family-based applicant needs to be aware of. First of all, everything that originally was submitted to immigration needs to be updated. So if we're talking, let's say, of a family-based or specifically more of a marriage-based application, any additional proof of a valid and existing marriage needs to be provided for. So for instance, proof that a marriage is valid can be demonstrated by shared assets and shared debts. This can be in the form of joint bank accounts, joint credit cards, joint insurance, such as health insurance, car insurance, life insurance, renter's insurance, name of both on the title of a home or mobile home or vehicles, utility bills, internet bills, water bills, things of that nature. Showing a history of having multiple statements over time is a great way to demonstrate that you are in a real and existing relationship. So what you need to do is bring both the originals of those statements, and you also want to bring a second separate set of copies. And the reason is that the immigration officer will typically want to see the originals, but also will want to keep a copy for themselves to add to your file. So if you go to the interview itself and don't have copies to give, not every immigration officer is going to be willing to make the copy during the interview. So rather than having a situation in which your case may be held up because you have to submit copies, it's better to bring one set for you to keep and one set to give to the immigration officer in case it becomes a question. So the best way to prepare is A, bring those documents, the ones that need to be updated, especially for marriage-based applications, and then two, to also go to the actual immigration office prior to your immigration date. That is on a weekend, on a late evening. It's important to drive by and see where you're actually going, because depending on where you're coming from, it's not hard to miss the turnoff from I-45 going southbound to get onto the Gears Road Drive. Because if you miss it, you're going to be stuck on either I-45 going southbound or on going east or west on Beltway 8. So secondly, to reiterate, it's important to know where you're going, so it's important to visit ahead of time. Third, an important thing to understand is to always dress professionally for these interviews. Whether you are the spouse, whether you're sponsoring your parents are sponsoring you, it's best to be dressed up. Being dressed up, being in the form of what you'd be wearing to an interview, a work interview. Doesn't necessarily have to be dressed up like you're going to a wedding, but you certainly want to look professional because you will be treated as you are presented. Fourth, an important thing to do with respect to preparing for this interview is you want to get to your actually get to the location at least 30 and preferably 45 minutes before your interview. That's mainly to take into account the fact that this is Houston, there is traffic. So if you are cutting it close because there's traffic and it's taking longer for you to reach your destination, getting there early at least buys you that extra time rather than being late to the actual interview. Because if you're late, immigration can skip you and claim that you are a no-show, even if you happen to walk in the door 5 minutes late. If you're late and you're not ready, they will move on to the next person. So don't let that happen to you. So once you get there, you'll want to bring your mask during the current pandemic. You'll want to bring the copies that I previously mentioned earlier in this video. You'll have to go to security, just like the airport. And then when you finally actually get through security, you will have to check in. Right behind security is a large desk, and there's typically a line. So what you need to do is show a copy of your appointment date. It's a one-page document from immigration that says your name, your mailing address, the date and time of your interview. So you want to present that to the person behind the desk. They will check you in. They'll give you a number such as N55, P17. It typically is an alphabetical letter followed by 2 or 3 digits as a numerical number, and you just wait to be called. From there, your name eventually will be called. It's not unusual for immigration to be falling behind. The later on in the day, more likely it is that you're going to be delayed in actually having your interview. So if you have an interview time beginning at 8 or 8:30, more likely than not, you'll start right on the dot. However, if your interview is at 12, 12:30, it wouldn't be unusual for the immigration officer to call you 30, 45 minutes past your scheduled time. And the reason for that is the person who is interviewing you has other people that they have to interview. So if one person has an interview that runs late, that will cascade and affect every other person that the immigration officer has to interview for that day. So the later on in the day, the more likely it is you're going to be late. So just a word of warning, there is no vending machine at the Immigration Services office. There's no coffee machine. So if you need something to eat, to munch on, just bring something in your purse, on your person, within your coat that's sealed. Or same thing with coffee. You can bring coffee, you can't bring coffee in, so whatever you have, you need to drink it in the car. So once you get seated, you wait, listen for your number to be called. You go to literally what's called door number 1, and you go to a immigration officer's room about the same size as my own room right behind me. You'll be asked to stand, be sworn in by the immigration officer, and you'll need to pull out your ID. Typically, what we've seen as a trend is that the immigration officer will ask for one set of documents from the petitioner, that is the U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, and one set from the foreign national. So if you're a U.S. citizen, it has been very commonplace lately for the immigration officer to ask for proof of your citizenship. This can be proof in the form of your birth certificate. This can be proof in the form of your passport. But you certainly want to bring your original and a copy for the immigration officer just in case he or she does not have one. And same for if you are the foreign national. They will ask for your passport, your driver's license, your social security card, your work permit or travel permit if it applies to you. There are a number of things there that can be asked for. Second thing that the officer will do is they'll ask for those supporting documents I just mentioned at the very beginning of this video. Any type of supporting documents showing that you are, especially in a marriage-based application, before Immigration Services, they will ask for those supporting documents that have been updated, showing that you have a true and valid marriage, that you are sharing assets and debts. Once the interview starts, typically the way it works is the immigration officer will ask a list of questions to the petitioner, that is the U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident. And it consists of what is your name, what is your date of birth, what are your parents' names. I've started seeing that on interviews lately. Other things that will be asked about will relate to what's your current mailing address, where have you previously lived, where was your spouse born, what's your spouse's birthday, what's your spouse's telephone number. So hopefully you already know all those questions without really having to think about it. And in the same respect, the officer will then ask the foreign national the exact same questions. Name, date of birth, who your parents are, address, how they came to the United States, how they met, especially in instance of a marriage-based application, how they met their American citizen spouse. So they want to know the date. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Whether it was Match.com, whether it was World of Beer, whether it was church, whatever it happens to be, immigration has typically been asking a lot of questions about that. They've also been wanting to see original documents related to the marriage certificate. So you need to bring the original and a copy for the immigration officer. Other things, and I'm looking here at my notes because I've had several interviews lately. Other things that the immigration officer will be looking for will be determining if you have violated any terms of your, excuse me, I'll rephrase it. Any instance in which the foreign national has violated their immigration status will be of interest to the immigration officer. So they want to know if there was an authorized work authorization, if they have been arrested, but not convicted. If there's been a conviction, the immigration officer needs to know about that. There's no point in hiding that. Even if a person were to get their criminal records expunged, immigration still has access to that information. And for immigration purposes, a conviction for a criminal conviction, even expunged, is still considered a conviction for immigration purposes. So there's no point in hiding that. If you have questions, please give me a call about that. I'll be happy to explain to you in more detail. Other things that they will be looking for would be verifying if the foreign national has any type of military training, if they have ever been deported, be it voluntarily, involuntarily, if they have been on public assistance. And one thing that has been of interest lately is that immigration wants to know if there's a sponsoring relative that's not the American citizen spouse or legal permanent resident spouse, as if the other person, the sponsoring relative, sponsoring friend, can provide additional information. That being, immigration wants to see a tax return, wants to see a W-2, a 1099, showing that the person sponsoring has the ability to pay and support the foreign national. So it's something that I've started seeing as a trend lately, something I haven't seen in prior years. And apart from that, it's a fairly straightforward process. Most of these questions you should already know. A lot of these are biographical. A lot of these relate to where you have lived, how you met. The worst thing that can happen is to not tell your attorney the truth, so that if there's an issue, if there's an arrest, if there's a conviction, telling your attorney should be done prior to the interview, not right before, and certainly not during, because there are certain things that can be fixed, there's certain things that can be handled, but it's best to inform your attorney of what's going on. So the purpose of this video is just to kind of give you a quick overview as to what to expect when going to an immigration interview here in Houston, Texas, especially for those who are filing for a family-based immigration on behalf of a foreign national spouse, foreign national child, foreign national parent. So if there are any questions, feel free to give me a call. I'll be very happy to talk to you in more detail. Telephone number here is 281-571-7672. Again, my name is Luis Hess. I'm an immigration attorney here in the greater Houston area, including Houston Heights and the Woodlands. And if you have any questions about what it's like to go through the immigration process, or you specifically have questions about how an interview is conducted for marriage-based applications, please give us a call at 281-571-7672. Have a great day. Thank you.